Hey all, it's the Nitro nerds here, and we recently had a request to do a video concerning setting your trim on your car. So I thought if this can help someone, absolutely, I'm happy to explain at least what I know on how to do this. So the first thing you want to understand is setting your trim is really, it's not the way that you want to set your brake and throttle linkage. It's a way, I guess, to augment it. So let me explain exactly what I mean. Unfortunately, I don't have really anything to show per se, and this is kind of outside the scope of setting up your linkages altogether, which again I would think is an entirely different video, and I don't feel like breaking all this down and resetting everything because it can be kind of a pain. But the least you need to know with respect to your trim. So let's pretend like we're walking through everything. First thing you want to do is make sure that take your horns off and make sure that you turn on your servos and you have them at neutral. If you don't understand how to find neutral, it's pretty simple. It all depends on the type of transmitter you have, of course. If you have a digital one, you can see here you're typically going to have your steering, your throttle. The whole idea is you want to just make sure that it's in the middle. If you have a non-digital one, such as something like this right here, again, there's just going to be knobs right here. I would suggest just simply referring to the manual that came with it. But that's your starting point, is to definitely make sure that your servos are at neutral with the horns off. So let's start with steering. What you'll want to do is once you have it at neutral, get your tires and set them as straight as you can. Then take your horn and put your horn on. Now, unless you've caught lightning in a bottle, you're probably going to have to trim it just a little bit. But put your horn on, tighten everything up, and then roll the car, drive it, do whatever you need to do. And you use your steering trim, of course, to just make sure that you go in a straight line. That's pretty easy. Normally what I'll do is I'll just punch it, I'll turn it, and I'll start the engine, punch it, let it roll, and then just watch which way it's going and turn it the other direction. The other part, probably a little more important than that, is you want to adjust the travel for your steering. And what that means, I'm just going to turn this on here quickly. What that means is how far your wheels actually turn when you are going through and turning your car. So in other words, you don't want your wheels to turn more, or excuse me, you don't want your throttle to turn more and to have load on it more than the wheels themselves can turn. So really what you do is you just look to see how far your wheels turn, and then from there you would set your steering rate to that level right there. Normally I just go back to where it'll come out just a little bit and then just set it back more. But again, because what you don't want to do is add additional load, because that will just wear out your servo faster. Now on to the throttle. This is a little bit more complex. So the best analogy that I can provide is think in terms of a puppet show. So the way your car starts, the way your car moves, the way your car stops, all of that is determined by your linkage here. So think of these links as really the strings that instruct the puppets, in other words, your carburetor, your brakes, and all that, what to do. So obviously this is very, very important that you have this set up correctly. Once you have your throttle servo set to neutral, put the horn back on. What you want to do is begin with the idle stop. And this is assuming you've already tuned your engine and everything, because setting your idle stop is typically the last thing you're going to want to do. But the whole idea, and I'm going to try to do all this with one hand, I've got a little carburetor right here. The whole idea is you want to set your idle stop before anything. Typically when they come out of the box, they're going to be a little bit more open than what you'll want to have it set to. I've seen them as far as, you know, 1.5 millimeters, something like that. I usually set mine between 8 millimeters and 1 millimeter. But the idle stop is this screw right here. Screwing it clockwise will actually open it up, and screwing it counterclockwise will close it down. What this does is this determines how the car idles. So if you have it closed too much, you're not even going to be able to start the car. If you have it open too much, you're going to start the car and wish you didn't. So it's important that you get that just right. So the best thing to do, again, keep the linkages off, set the idle stop, press this this little accordion thing right here, which is your actual throttle ball. Press that in, and then make sure that you have the exact amount that you want. Again, you're shooting for about 0.8 to a millimeter. And once you've done that, and you put this throttle ball on it, make sure that you have this pushed in all the way, because you can see just right here, I can push it in, but it just kind of comes out by itself. So you definitely want to make sure that this is pushed in all the way. The whole idea of an idle stop, it's just that. It's simply a stop inside of here that will prevent the carburetor from closing any further. Okay, so that's the whole idea, is that you can push it in as hard as you can, but it's not going to go past whatever gap that you set. So have that pushed in all the way. Put this throttle ball on it. Then from there, if you did everything right, what should happen is when you're at neutral, you should see the same size gap that you had set before the ball was on. Let's say that you get it on and the gap is not how you want. So in other words, even though your throttle is at neutral, it's maybe when you get your horn on, it's a little bit like this or a little bit like this or whatever. Well, that's where you can use your trim. So what I would do is simply just take the horn off and adjust your trim to where you can get this on straight, to where you put this ball on to the carburetor again, and it's holding in the gap. It's holding this in as far as it will go. Because what you don't want to do is, so let's say that the gap is too large, or you get it running and the idle is not where you want. It's too fast or not, not fast enough. Instead of using your trim to increase the idle or decrease the idle, you use your idle stop. So if you have this on and you close your idle stop, what will happen is it's got this little return spring on it, and it will actually move it with it. So you just kind of have to fiddle around with it. But again, the whole idea is you don't want to use your trim to set your idle stop. You want to use the actual idle stop screw to set your idle stop. Another way to do it is you can actually take this little set screw right here, loosen that up a little bit, and move your throttle rod in. There's different ways to do it, because you have to think about anytime you use your trim, especially on your throttle, there's going to be other effects. There's going to be some side effects, and if you have to move this in, you're essentially also going to be applying brake, so you'll have to reset your brake bias and things such as that. But as I noted, the whole intent is you don't want to use your trim to actually move the carburetor out or necessarily move it in. You want to try to get it set when you put this actual ball onto the carburetor ball stud right here itself. Then the other thing you want to think about is the travel. So, and that's going to dictate how far your throttle travel, at least, will come out, and or how far your brake travel will come out. So why is that important? So as an example, let's say that you set your throttle travel, or it's the way it just comes out of the box, it's set, and it doesn't open the carb all the way. Well, you're probably only going to be going 3/4 speed of what you could be and never even know it. So the best way to do it is just take the air filter off, apply your throttle, and then make sure that it opens all the way. Now to that end, you also want to make sure that it opens all the way and just all the way, because again, the same principle applies as it did on the steering. You don't want to add any additional load to your surface. So once it gets all the way open, mark that and then set that as your travel for the throttle. And so that's really it. You just got to kind of keep playing with it and make sure everything is set right. If it's not, you'll know it, because it's very important to have a good link setup. As I noted several times already, don't rely on your trim so much. Again, that's really just to augment, to kind of fine-tune it, if you will. The whole idea is really how you set these links up on the throttle itself. That's it. Have a great day.